We're going to set this up so you guys can see. All right, guys, I am going to take roll, and then we're going to get a wheel demo today. Let's see. And so you're leaving at 1:30. You're leaving at 1:45. Is that right? No, not you. You're leaving at 1:45, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So will you remember? Because I will forget. I can set a timer for when. Actually, when you leave, remind me, and I'll set a timer for 15 minutes. Then we'll do this. Yes.
Are we doing the wheel today, or are we just doing a demo?
You're learning today. Yeah. So what'll happen is we will have a few days of learning because there's really honestly there's a lot that goes into this. But what'll happen is I'm going to do a demo today. It'll take about half the class, and then next class, Serenity, I found your seat right here. And then probably Friday I'll do another demo. Next week, one day we'll do a demo, and then on block day next week you'll be able to start working on the wheel. Okay. Let me finish my roll really quick. Also, just for reference, we are going to be. My plan is to live stream a YouTube video for the wheel, so that. Anybody that's not here can reference it later on. Okay, I'll have to figure out how to adjust that and everything, but that's something I'll work on. So I've got roll taken. What I'm going to do is I'm going to set my computer up so that because it has to be through my computer, my phone. I'm having some issues with doing it that way, and so this is going to be kind of noisy. So here's what I need you to do. Don't do it until I say everybody get up. This row here. Okay, you guys are going to get up, push your chairs in. I'd probably just put your backpacks on the table so that they don't get squished. You guys there, that row, you're going to get up. No, let me start over again. You guys here are going to put your backpacks on the table, take your chairs with you out there. Then you guys will get up, put your backpacks on the table, take your chairs out there. We're going to push these three tables all the way up so we have lots of room back there. Does that make sense? So these tables are going to stay. You guys in here are going to take all your chairs and any extra chairs, just push them this way. We'll push all those tables back. Okay? So everybody in the middle, get up, put your backpacks on the table, take your chairs out of there, and we're going to squish those tables together. No, because you're gonna use your chair to sit up there.
He's gonna sit there, and then we're gonna put our chairs.
What's up, people?
He's live streaming.
Can people see us?
Yeah, they see us.
Hey, girl.
What's up? There. Wait, we didn't see those people. That's so cool. You guys wow. Hello, people. Wow. I can. Wow, no, this one. That's good. Wow.
The last thing is I'm going to set my camera up. Oops. I need to get this will give me a little more height. All right, looks good. I need a chair. Can I use that chair? Actually, I like the. Yeah, this one's good. I'll use it. Thank you, Joe. Oh, you're all right. All right. I'm going to make the video. So, like, once I get settled, if you'll just kind of check it, make sure everything looks right, you can see everything. All right, welcome. Glad you guys are here. So when you're going to work on the wheel, there's a few things you need to know. It looks like you can see everything pretty good. So I'm going to walk you through all of it. It's going to take about an hour today, then you'll have an hour to work. But what I'm going to be teaching you, we'll kind of review a little bit here and there. Those of you, if you're not here today, or if you're not here today, or if you leave early or whatever, you can always catch the rest of the information on here. But I need to tell you how to set up, I need to show you how to work, and I need to show you how to clean up. So I would highly recommend an apron. You know, they're down there. They're also my cabinet over there. I'm going to grab my apron. I'm going to grab 2 pieces of clay. Actually, I might grab some extras. You would grab 2 pieces normally. And I'll just walk you through everything you need to do. Yes?
When you say 2 pieces, do you mean like
I will
two,
show
like,
you.
rolls?
I know. I will show you. 2 pieces of clay that are 1.25 pounds each. That's a great question. All right, so I'm going to go and I'm going to grab all of those things. So I'm going to ask today that you don't have conversations while you're waiting, because I'll try to talk to you, keep things going as I'm going. So my apron's back here, and then the clay's over here. So on the clay, it is a good suggestion that you don't have clay that's like real hard. Soft clay is a little bit better to learn with, but you know, sometimes you only have what you have to choose from. But if you have a choice, it's better to have clay a little bit soft and a little bit hard. Okay? So the clay we use in here, I try to keep it to be a soft clay. So every time you throw, while you're learning, I want you to think about using 1 pound and 1/4. Okay? So on my scale, what does that read out? What number is that going to say?
1.5?
That's 1.5 pounds.
Oh, 1.25.
1.25, 1 pound and 1/4. So this says 1.26. Close enough. Next one. 1.17. 1.27. Good. That'll work. So I'm going to put the clay back up. Something else you guys need to get used to doing is, if there's a line of people out there, leave the clay out, right, so they can use it. If there's a last person in the line, what should you do with the clay in the bag?
Put it back in the bag.
Put it back in the bag so it doesn't dry out. That's something we haven't talked a lot about, but that's important. All right, so I got my 2 pieces of clay. I'm going to grab a couple of bats. You'll only need 1, but because I'm demoing, once I get going, I don't want to have to get up and move around and do things. I've also got something to wedge on. Where do you guys normally wedge? You can use the table up there with the canvas on it. You can do it at your seats, but another really good place is that gray table where I keep the extra clay and the sign-out sheet is. That's a wedging table. It's made to wedge on. You can use that as well. But I'm going to use this today for my demo. The last thing I need, I think the last thing, I might remember something else, but I need water. So you have 2 bowls. I'm going to put water in this one. All right. How much water do I have?
Like half a container?
About a half a bowl, yep. Okay. And I'm going to put it back here right now because I want to show you how to set up the wheel and things are going to be in the way. One last thing I'm going to grab is, if you want to grab a sponge or a rag, it might be helpful to have. But if you get a lot of clay in your rag, make sure you rinse it before you stick it back in the bucket, okay? Okay, so look at my wheel, look at all the other wheels. Mike, can you see how my wheel is turned around? Okay, so you guys will be facing the wall, okay? Hey, Clarissa, are you just getting something? Okay. Everything is kind of backwards because of that, but if I face the other way, you won't be able to see anything that I'm doing. So let's put our wheel together first. So you have a splash pan. Everybody say splash pan.
Splash pan.
Okay, you know what a pan is, right? It's like you put stuff in a pan, maybe a frying pan or whatever. So this, you put stuff in here, and actually you're not going to put it, the water and the extra clay is going to fall into this, okay? And the fact that it says splash, it'll help keep you from getting splashed so much. If you throw without a splash pan, you're going to get stuff all over you. So this protection. So take the bigger one, okay? Start with it. I'm going to move this one up here. You're going to put it on the wheel, and it slides straight on. People are going to try putting them on all different ways. But the way this goes is it slides straight on. And if you put it on and it's loose like this, it's not right. It's got to be a tight fit. So this is called the flange right here. It's called the flange. Okay. This flange, there's another flange underneath here that if you peek down, you can see them under the wheels. This flange goes under the other flange. So when you put it on, loose is not right. It's got to be tight like this. This is a tight fit. And you have to really work it on. It's hard to push it on. You want to twist it like this. And it goes on there all the way. And it's tight on there. Okay. The other part of the splash pan is smaller. It has these little holes. They fit on these little buttons underneath them here. Okay. So this one kind of slides in at an angle down and then snap it into place. Just like that. And it snaps into place when it's ready. And it's about the same distance all the way around. Okay. If you're ever working on the wheel and it's like you hear this, okay, your splash pan is not in place. Okay, so that's ready to go now. What's this called?
Splash pan.
Okay, this is the wheel head. Okay, this is what you work on. Now, some people work directly on the wheel head. In this classroom, to make things more simple, we have bat pins, B-A-T, bat pins. Okay, and the bat pins, if you work without a bat on here, if those, as you're working, if those hit your hand, if they hit your hand, they hurt. So you don't want to work on here just like this. We are going to use bats. So here's a bat. I looked up why do they call these bats, and the best explanation I saw was they kind of look like what a bat might look like flying through the air. There was no other good explanation. So I'm not sure why they're called bats, but it's a bat. Small hole, big hole. Put the small hole on first onto the bat pin, and then the big hole just slides right into place. If you do it the other way, it's fine. Big hole first, but sometimes it's hard to find that hole. So small hole and the big hole. Now you notice this wheel just kind of is creeping very slowly ahead. Like if I have this clay on here, you see it's very slowly moving. If some of the wheels I need to adjust to make them so they don't do that anymore. If it's moving, you don't want it to move, just turn the wheel off. So there's two switches. There's a switch that's closest to you when you're sitting. Okay. So you guys over here, you can see these switches on the wheels. Those of you over here, there's some wheels. Okay. The switch that's closest to you is power. On is up and off is down. Okay. The other switch that's further away from you, towards the back there, that is direction. Okay. So you have counterclockwise, which is how most of us are going to throw, and then you have clockwise. Okay. So raise your hand if you're right-handed. All right, hands down. Raise your hand if you're left-handed. Wow. This is the most left-handed people I've ever had in class. Impressive. Okay, cool. So you can throw with the wheel going counterclockwise, and I know a lot of teachers that only teach that direction. But when I bought wheels, I bought the more expensive ones, so they go both ways. So if you want to throw left-handed, it's really not left-handed, just throwing it clockwise. You would. So I'm going to have you listen. So this switch right here and this switch here, right now we're all going in that counterclockwise direction. If I pull back on the switch, you'll hear it click. Hear that? This one same way. That's neutral. Because you don't want your wheel to go this direction, all of a sudden slam in the other direction, because it can ruin it. So it goes to neutral, and then I'm going to pull back one more time, and now that's the other direction. So when I go this time, it's going to go clockwise this time. If I turn it on, now it goes clockwise. Okay. So if you're a lefty, you're going to do everything on your left-hand side. Okay. If you want to throw that way, or you can throw right-handed. It doesn't matter. It's real. I say right-handed. It's not right-handed. It's counterclockwise. Okay. But if you're going to do it, it's here. So I'm going to show you guys the clock up on the wall. And I don't have my pointer with me. So what number is at the top of the clock? 12 o'clock. So when I'm looking at my wheel, on the top is 12 o'clock. On these wheels here, at the top will be 12 o'clock for you. Everybody that's throwing counterclockwise, which is basically that, like I'm going to throw, we're going to be working at 3, 4, and 5 o'clock. So here on my wheel. So here's 12 o'clock, 3 o'clock, 4 and 5. I'm going to be working here all the time in this area. If you throw with the wheel going the other way, just on the other side, you would be working at 9, 8, and 7. So you would be working here, here, and here. I'm going to get to it. I can show you. It's not a big deal.
How come when you say that side, do you mean like the clay is on that side, or do you mean like?
Yeah, the clay is always going to be in the middle. But what happens is you work with your hands on this side or your hands on this side.
Oh, okay.
And if you're a lefty and you're working with the wheel going this way, you need to be working with your hands on this side. If the wheel's going the other way, it doesn't matter whether you're righty or lefty, you need to be working with your hands here, because what happens is this way, the clay rolls through my hands. If I'm working over here, it's going to have issues. Well, I've got it reversed. Let me put it back. So this way here, the clay is going to slide through my hands this way. If I put my hands over here, the clay's going to hit my hands and it's going to cause problems. So it's just whichever way your wheel is going, you need to have the clay slide through your hands. Okay, let's get to it though. So I'm going to start by wedging my clay. So we know how to set up the wheel. So pedal on the floor. I always do need to show you the pedal. So this is like in a car. You push the pedal, it goes, right? The harder you push it, the faster it goes. Okay. It also stays in place in your car when you take it off. It releases. This one, when you push it down, it stays down. So let me turn the wheel back on, and I'll put my clay on here so you can see. Okay. So when I push the pedal down, it goes forward. This is slow. Okay. And you can see it getting faster and faster and faster. I don't want it to fly off, so I'm not going to push it all the way down. To release it, you just push back on it like this. Now, when I throw, I get the speed that I want with my foot, and then I take my foot off the pedal so it stays at that speed. I recommend you learning that way, and then later on you can work with your foot on the pedal.
If I'm left-handed, can I like put it on my left
Sure.
my left foot?
Yeah, you can move it to either side. Okay. All right. That being said, let's go ahead and finish setup because I'm kind of skipping ahead here. So bat, splash pan, you do the bat pins, okay? Wheel head, right? And then in your cup, water in one of them. I like the water right here because I work right here. And I'm bringing it down to the wheel, but wherever you're comfortable, you can put stuff. There's no rule on where it goes. Should be wire cutters, a sponge, and 2 wooden tools. Okay, this is called a rib, just like we have ribs in our body. My guess is in the old days, they probably got animals and they used parts of the ribs for the tools. Okay, that's probably why they call it a rib. This is called a stick tool. There's probably another name for it, but everybody calls it a stick tool that I know. And then a sponge. So sponge in the water, that's for my gooey clay. And then my tools, generally, I'll just set up here. Now, when we're done, we clean up everything, right? Everything. Wheel, floor, chair, everything gets dirty. So let's talk about so we know how to set up. This is what we need. One other thing I'd recommend that you bring with you is a needle tool. Now, these are dangerous if you're not careful, but just be careful with them. I'll show you what to do with this, but it's a good idea. They won't be back here. It's a good idea to get one. If you don't have one, you can ask someone to get you one, or you can skip using one altogether. Okay? All right, so my clay, I'm going to start by wedging it. So there's 2 ways of wedging it. I'll show you both ways. And if you can't see, please stand up while I'm doing this part. I'm going to do what's called a ram's horn. Okay? So think about a ram that's got these big spiral horns. And so what I do is I take my clay and I push down and pull back. Push down, pull back. You notice I'm not making it flat. I'm just pushing it each time about like that. Now, I usually will kind of work it around so it ends up being a cylinder, but if I don't make it into a cylinder, I'll show you what it looks like when it's done. Okay, so these are spiral horns, and that's kind of why they call it a ram's head. It just would go out further and further, but I like it to end up being a spiral, so I'll do it like that at the end, and that'll get popped down on the wheel. The other wedging that I do is the spiral wedge. Almost the same, but rather than coming straight back, I come straight back with a little twist. And so I still get the spiral, but rather on both sides, there's a spiral kind of here, and then, of course, internally. And when I'm done, I just kind of flatten it out, so I kind of get like almost like a little diamond shape kind of thing, and then that'll go in the wheel that way. Practice both. If you have questions, I can show you as we go through. Normally, this stuff isn't back here. I'll just have it back here so that you guys wedge up there. When you bring your clay back, you're all set up and good to go. All right. Any questions before I start? Cool. Okay, so 3 steps to throwing. There's lots of little things, but 3 main steps. First step is centering. Everybody say centering.
Centering.
That's when you get the clay in the center of the wheel. Now watch this. Normally I leave my wheel on all the time, but I keep stopping it because of the head. So does that look centered?
No.
It's all over the place. When it's centered, it's going to be right in the center, and that looks pretty centered, right? But you kind of see how if I put my hand in there, it makes my hand move. When it's centered, like really get it centered, it's just going to, your hands are going to be like this while they're touching the clay. Just super, super centered, okay? But this is good to start with. First step is centering. Second one is opening. So center it, and then you what? Open, okay? And the last one is pulling the clay out, or pulling. So what's the first step?
Centering.
Second?
Open.
Third? Pulling, okay. I got to have 3 fingers working. Okay. So that being said, let me go through the steps. So first thing I need to get as close to the center as possible. So I just get my couple of fingers wet. And I don't want a ton of water on here. But when I do that, can you see that little circle in the middle? It shows me right where the center is. So I'm going to put my clay right on there. Now, you can do it like this and get it as close as you can. People do that. I like to just, know my spot, and then I'll just plop it down like that. Okay. All right. So if I turn this on, it's kind of centered, but it's, my hands are going to move all over. Okay. Centering is that hardest part to learn at first. The other parts have a lot of little nuances to them, but this is where you start. So when I get water and clay, it makes slip. You guys have slip at your table, right? And it's real slippery. So you want your hands and your clay wet so that it stays slippery. If you do this, all you're doing is just making a ton of water, and sorry about that, making a ton of water in your splash pan, and it's kind of messy. So if you can use your sponge, but just do a little bit on there, okay? And just kind of get used to using your hands to put water on there. Now, to center it, you have to first get it really attached to the wheel well, because some of you are going to work and it's going to spin all over, and I'll try to demonstrate on the second one, it moving around. So we're getting it attached to the wheel, and we're getting it more to the center. So what you're going to do is, anytime you work, if your arm's like this, no matter how strong or weak you are, that is not as strong as this. This, my elbows are locked into my hips, and I'm stable. It's like an athletic position for throwing clay.
What if our arms are like shorter and we can't like get to the clay?
Oh, okay. I skipped a step. First thing you need to do when you put your chair up here, you get your chair right up against that wheel, and then you sit down. And then if you need to, I bring the wheel all the way up to me like this. I'm like right on the wheel. So if you're shorter, you're going to do that. Even if you're taller, you're still going to do that. So I have some seniors I've had like 6'5" seniors, really tall seniors. And they're a little bit different because they are really big. But for all of us in here, this is where you're going to be, like right up like this. He's touching my leg. Okay, so everything is wet. If you feel things starting to stick, it means it's getting dry. You need to relubricate, okay? And it takes a fair amount of water, but you just don't want water running everywhere. So I'm going to lean into the clay and think about leaning into it, pushing it towards the wall, which pretend this is my wall. Leaning into it and pushing it down at the same time. So watch me. So see my hands? Some of you, when you're doing this, you're going to be like, it's going to throw you around. It will. Okay. You get better, and it'll do that less. But watch me lean into it, and you see how my hands just kind of stabilize. Okay. So that's a good starting point. Okay. So what I want to do now, once I got it basically centered, I'm going to cone it up, and when I cone it up, so let's talk about that for a minute. When you center, you're going to make it look like female and male body parts, not intentionally, but it does look that way. So it's going to do that. I know some of you are looking like, yeah, that looks like, what, okay? And other ones are going to look like other things. Just realize that's what it's, first time everybody sees it, like, oh yeah, that looks like her part or his part or whatever. Just realize it doesn't. We're all past it. Okay, moving on. So now I'm going to cone it up. And so I'm gonna lean into the clay like I did before, but rather than pushing down, I'm gonna squeeze my hands together this way, and watch what happens. It comes up. Okay, this is really centered now. Okay, watch when I put my hand on there. Oh, there's a little movement, but it's pretty good. Okay, now I'm gonna cone it back down. So when you cone it down, I'm gonna have people do this, and they're gonna put more pressure on the top. When you do that, look how wobbly it gets. So to avoid that, you're going to push with this hand and then push this hand down. And that'll keep it centered when you go down with. This is the position you want it to throw in. This is like a cupcake shape or a hockey puck shape. That's what we're going for.
Why did you make that clicking sound?
So, yeah, you guys hear that? Okay, that is the bat pins and the little holes. We've used these bats for like 10 or 15 years, so they're a little bit, there's a little bit of play in there. So when you hear that noise, like if you hear that and you pull your clay up at the same time, that bat's going to pop off and it's going to spin all around and scare you to death. So if you hear that rocking, it's fine, but just keep in mind when you're doing that, you're always working down, never pulling up when you hear that noise. Okay? All right, so I'm going to cone it up again. So lean into the clay, think about pushing it towards the wall and squeezing my hands together at the same time. Now, whenever you let go of the clay, you always let go very slowly. Watch what happens when I let go fast. It remembers right where my hands were and it goes out of center. So if I'm doing exactly the same thing, but I let go slowly, it kind of recenters itself as you're letting go. Okay? All right, so I'm going to cone it back down, and then it should be centered. We should be ready to open it up. So I let go slowly so that it stays nice and centered. So this is perfectly centered, or at least, perfectly enough to move on to the next step. Okay. Now, I know teachers that teach the wheel that centering takes some time, takes practice. They don't let you do anything else until you get it centered properly. So people work 2 weeks on centering. Thing about it is while this is fun, it's not as fun as making something. So I want you to work on getting it centered, but at some point you're going to move on to the next step. Okay? And I used to teach the next step, which is what starts with an O. What is it called again? Opening. I used to teach it by using 2 thumbs. Get your elbows locked in, get 2 thumbs, and push down on the clay like this. But I found a better way that I like better. So the way I teach it now, and I'm showing you both because you might want to try one if you're having trouble with one. So elbows connected to your body. This hand supports this hand on top. And you're going to push down onto the clay with like 1 to 2 fingers. Really 1 finger, but the other fingers are just kind of partially there. So I'm going to push down. And I want to think about going like 3/8 of an inch to 1/2 inch from the bottom, like that far from the bottom. Now this is where the needle tool comes in handy. When you think you've gone far enough, stop your wheel. Stick your needle tool in the center. And then slide your finger to the bottom of the needle tool and pull it out. And that'll show you exactly how deep it is. Okay, which is about what I want to start with. Now, here's the deal. You're thinking, I just put a hole in my cup. Nobody wants a hole in their cup. That hole will fill back up and you will never know it was there. Okay, it does get filled up. I didn't do it for a long time because I thought, I'm not ruining my pieces, but it does not ruin your piece if you do it at this stage. Okay, so I have a hole in the middle, so now I need to open it up. So think about making a coffee mug to start with. The tall coffee mug is what you're going for. We're doing cylinders to start with. Teachers always teach cylinders first because you can make anything out of a cylinder. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get my wheel going again. I put a little bit of water inside so it stays slippery. Now, remember, I push my fingers down. At this point, I want to pull my fingers straight out to make a straight up and down inside. So watch how it opens up inside. And I open up about as wide as a coffee mug, which to me, that's about how wide a coffee mug is. Okay? Now I'm going to show you a step that you don't need to do to start with. Later on you'll want to do. By the way, everything we've done so far has been kind of like right here, but we're going to move to the steps where now we go from 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock, and 5 o'clock. So I'm going to flatten the bottom a little bit with my rib. And to do this, I'm working right here about 4 o'clock, push straight down in the center and to the right. And it just flattens the bottom out. And it makes the sides nice and straight. Pulls off some extra clay slips. That goes in my gooey clay bucket. Okay, so I've centered it. It's open. Now I get a pool. And this is where the part that's the coolest comes in. It also is the part that takes probably the most finesse once you get going with it. And this is where you make things, so it's really cool. So when you do this, you have 2 hands. This helps stabilize your arms and hands. This stabilizes them even more. You need your hands to become one unit. They need to work together. And the way you do this is you're going to squeeze your fingers together, okay, with them being connected. Now, see how they're coming together? This is like pinching the clay. If I pinch the clay, when I pinch it in, the clay's going to have to squish and go out somewhere else. So what I'm going to do is make sure everything is wet, inside and out. Make sure my fingers are wet. Elbows connected. Hands is one. You guys all right? Just working out. Okay. Hands is one. And I'm going to squish my fingers together. Now, I started throwing this way. I have started now, switched to throwing where I use a sponge on my outside finger. It just helps me grip the clay better. So I'm doing exactly this, but I have the sponge over my finger. And I would recommend that you learn that way. It really helps grip the clay. So you hands connected, right? My thumb and hand are here. You can go like this, whatever's comfortable. And then you're going to squish a little bit. And then you have to do this slowly. Each revolution is to move up a little bit, and it begins to bring the clay out. Okay? When you go to your next pool, if it's dry, just re-lubricate it. Same thing. I'm pushing in. Hands are connected right here, and I'm going to pull the clay up like that. Now, I'm trying to make a tall cylinder. It got a little bit wider than I wanted. So what you can do now, and this is all things you need to learn, you can collar it. So you get your hands wet on the inside here on each side. Make sure your clay is wet on the outside. And then I'm going to start here and make like a collar around it and just slowly bring my hands up, and it brings it in a little bit again. Okay, so it's going straight up. Now, can you see the spot here? It's a little bit thinner. That's a weak spot. I can feel it's really thin there. So when I pinch, If I pinch hard here, it's going to come off, but I can do a little bit more there and there. So one more pull. So everything is wet inside and out. Get my clay in there. My hands are connected the best I can connect them, and I'm going to pinch, and I'm going to bring this up. Feels thin all through here, so I'm just not even really squeezing. I'm just gliding over it and pull a little bit there. And this one will be done. Now, I like to finish off the rim, make the rim look nice when I'm done. I'm going to show you a couple quick things you can do, though. You can take your rib or your fingers, and you can change the shape. Like I can push out here, make it go out. I could push out. Now I could do a little groove in here somewhere if I wanted. And so these are things, once you start making things, you can kind of experiment with doing different stuff with the shapes. Okay. And then if I wanted to, I could actually bring this rim back in. So it's fun to play with, you know, kind of just see what you can do with this stuff. Now, I want to get rid of this extra clay down here. This is called the skirt. It's attached with the skirt down there. And I don't know if it's a reference to like skirts that people wear or not, but you get the idea. So I'm going to show you here, and then I'll move around so you guys can see. So once again, I'm working right here about 4 o'clock. I'm going to push the stick tool down in like a knife into the clay, and that skirt I'm going to cut off. So let me move around so you guys can see. So pretend I'm sitting right here, and this is like my 4 o'clock. I support my hands and everything, and I push the tool straight down into the clay like this to make that groove. And then I'm going to take my sponge with some water on it, my stick tool, put my stick tool in there carefully, and drip some water down into that groove. So I'll do it this way so you guys can see too. Drip some water down there. So there's water in here. If I stop my wheel, put my stick tool in, and then turn on slowly, it'll take that skirt right off of there. So this is all clay I don't have to trim later on. Okay, now if I was keeping this, there's water inside of it. I want to clean up, and you're not going to keep your first few because you're going to make some things and cut them and record them, and I'll show you how to do that. You kind of get your extra slip off of the wheel. If there's water inside your piece, it'll make it soft and weak, and it'll start cracking. So we want to get rid of the extra water inside. And then here's the part that you're not going to like. You're going to cut it. So you're going to take your wire, hold it under your thumbs, get it tight to the back, pull it straight to the middle and straight up. And then you can slide this piece off so you can see what the thickness is like all the way through. Now I have a record sheet that you guys are going to fill out. You can actually see kind of like here and here where that thin point is. It's a little bit weak in that point. Okay. But anyways, that's what it looks like inside of it. All right, you want to see another one? So I'm gonna do 3 examples, but I only grabbed 2 pieces of clay. So this generally, it's going to go in the gooey clay bucket, but for now I'm going to stick it in here. That's what that's for. Okay, so a couple things. I want to get this extra clay off of here, so I'm just going to take my rib. I'm just going to scrape it off like that. Okay, and now my hands are a little bit of a mess. I did grab a towel. If your hands get bad, you can go to the sink and wash them up or whatever. But I'm going to put this piece of clay on there. Okay, and this is probably the best spot, so I'm going to put it right there in the middle. Okay. And I'm going to recenter. So you guys walk me through the steps. What do I have to do?
Get your hands wet. Or no, do the thing with your elbows.
Okay, so yeah, I guess. So a couple things. There's a lot of things at the beginning. Got to have wet hands, clay. Get your elbows attached. And then I'm going to lean into the clay. Now I want you to think about, I'm pushing it onto the wheel, right? Getting it stuck well, and I'm pushing it towards the wall. Those are the things I want you to watch for. So everything's attached to my body. Clay's wet. I'm pushing down and towards the wall. Okay, so it's attached well there, and then it's kind of a lot more centered. So now I'm going to cone it up. Okay. So lean into it, squeeze my hands together. Now I feel it getting sticky down here. If you feel it getting sticky and you keep pushing, it's going to grab your hands and it's going to break off.
My hand's going to break off.
No, the clay, yeah. That's like a SpongeBob episode right there. Your hands get pulled off. If the clay is going to break off from itself, so it'll become too weak. Yeah. No, don't fear. The clay will not pull your hands off, but there are things that could be a problem. So yeah, so anybody that has longer hair. Okay, I've had people's hair get caught in. It does not rip the hair out of your head, but it's messy. Earbuds that have the cord on them. I've had earbuds caught in here wrapped all the way around there. So make sure If you work on the wheel, hair tied back if it's long, you have earbuds, run them under your shirt, or wireless ones obviously are the problem. Okay, so I coned it up. Next step was,
Push it and then push it down.
yep, coning down. So I'm going to push into it. Now watch when I push it. I actually want to make that clay move a little bit. Okay, because if you don't, it's going to end up getting out of center. So I'm going to lean into it, and I'm going to push down here. You notice my elbows are attached somewhere. Okay, let me cone it up again. You use a lot of pressure, and it's going to take you a while to figure out how much pressure, but you do use a lot of pressure. So lean into it and bring it down. Okay, let go slowly. All right, so it's centered. What's next?
Open.
Opening. Yep. Push down. Now, I would recommend while you're learning, check it with a needle tool. I'm going to skip that step so I know exactly where I am. I'm going to pull straight out. Hope it's dry, so I'm going to add some water. Okay. I'm going to press the bottom, make it flat. Now, you notice the speed has been the same the whole time. I'm going to slow the wheel down. So centrifugal force, it's spinning. How many have been on like those playground merry-go-rounds where you spin it? It's like you want to fly off, right?
Yeah.
You know what I'm talking about? That centrifugal force makes you want to fly off. Everything wants to move outward. So everything you make wants to go out, which becomes a ball. If you want it to get tall, you have to have slow speed so that it's not forcing out so quickly. Okay, so what's my next step? I've opened it. I've got a tickle in the back of my throat now from talking so much. All right, pulling, right? So fingers together, hands connected, elbows connected to the body. So squeeze and pull up. Now, another thing, when you get to the top, this is going to happen to most of you. You're putting a lot of pressure. When you get to the top, your hands fly off and it messes up the rim. So when you get to the top, you need to very gently release the pressure. Okay, and you'll the first time you do it, it's like, oh, that's exactly what it's talking about. Your hands will fly off of the piece, and it'll mess up the top. That's part of learning. Okay, another pull. Hands connected, elbows connected, fingers towards each other, and I'm going to pull. Should I make this one into a bowl? So normally a bowl, I start with the bowl shape, but I can also stretch the clay like I showed you at the top. I can begin stretching this one out. Not the best way to make a bowl, but you can do that.
It's more like a flower pot now.
Yeah. Clay has a lot of plasticity, a lot of bend that you can put into it. You just have to learn, where your limits are and what you can and can't do with it. Would you eat your Cheerios out of that?
Yes. No. Yes, I
If it was
would.
glazed,
Okay,
Yeah,
so I should have taken the stick tool and cut this before I opened it up so much, but I'm going to cut it now. I'm going to get that extra clay out of there. Now, you don't need to run water in it, but it makes everything so much easier when you take it apart. I'm going to do this while it's moving. Usually you stop it when you're learning. Take that extra clay out. And then I'm just going to refine this a little bit here. Now, if you were making a flower pot, you could take this, and you could take 2 fingers, and you could bend it outward, and outward. So what shape is it now? More square, right? But if I go in between each one of these, you got a really cool little flower pot, or a decoration bowl to put stuff in. Okay, I'm going to show you this one.
that's like perfect.
A lot of repetitions, a lot of practice.
That made me really sad.
So what'd you find when you're learning to throw? You make something that's a little bit off. You need to go, yeah. And you saw everything except for cleanup. So we'll slip out. You slip out this way. Ashley, will let you by there. All right, good luck. Have fun. All right, so we have got 10 minutes and you'll need to go. Okay, so any questions before we move to the cleanup part? Because the biggest part of this classroom-wise is cleanup. If we have, yes,
Can we start today?
you can start next week on our block day. I'm going to do a few more demos first. So,
Are we gonna be able to do any of the, like, are we gonna be able to finish like work?
say that again, sorry.
Are we gonna be able to finish our work?
Yes. Yep. Bye-bye, good luck. Where's that? Louder? 240, yes. Oh, so she's going to golf match, and then she has an appointment. That's where they're going. Okay. So, few things to tell you. If we have all 10 people working, which you can only have 10 at a time, I have 10 wheels. When 10 people are trying to clean up in the sinks, it's really difficult. So you want to try to space your cleanup. Everyone doesn't clean up at the same time. We want to leave at least 20 minutes before class is done that first day to clean up, because it takes a while. And once we get the rhythm of it, you guys get better at it, cleanup goes a lot quicker. But to start with, it's a lot of things, and we want to avoid getting clay everywhere. Yes.
Are there like a switch systems? Like once you've done one, probably let someone else go on the wheel? Or
So
is it, like,
what will happen is a couple different things. So let me tell you. So I have a sheet for you. I'll give you later. That if there's 3 practices, each one of those practices you're going to cut and you're going to record. They will not be this nice. You're going to be like, "Huh, this one's ugly, and I'm cutting it." Yeah, okay. And then hopefully by the time you get to your 4th one, it's like, "Ooh, this one's great. I'm going to keep it." But it won't be. We practice 3 times, right? But you can practice 100. There's only 3 you have to record. Are you heading out? All right. Good luck. Have fun. All right. So the 4th one is be the one that you keep. And we have a bowl and we have a cylinder, like a mug. So the cylinder, actually, you could add a handle to it, make a mug out of it or something like that once it gets leather hard. Other questions before we move into the cleanup phase? Yes.
So what if we like don't finish something on the wheel? Do we like cut it and then put it on in our bag, or do we just stop?
If you don't finish it on the wheel, you put it in the gooey clay bucket and start to finish next time. So what I started to say is this. When you first start working, you're going to make the ugliest little thing, and you'll be proud of it, though, because it's cool, okay? But you're going to want to, like, you're going to have something messed up, and you'll just spend, like, 2 hours working on that, getting it nice. Once you've done it a while, you make something that's got a little perfection. It's like, I'm going to start over, because honestly, in 1 minute, I can make another one. So when you first start, you try to save everything, because that's just what we do. But after you get better at it, you don't worry about saving every little thing.
What's a wasn't ugly?
Well, and ugly is a relative thing. I mean, this was beautiful, right? It really was beautiful. But it was for demo. I wanted you to see what it looked like. I also wanted you to understand that I don't want you to get on here once and make something that's like, I'm proud of it and I'm done. I want you to be proud of everything you make. But your first experience, you're going to be like, "Oh my God, what did you tell us? This is so hard." It's like, I got clay, and seriously, you're going to have clay all over here and maybe in your hair, and it's going to be rough. Okay, for some of you. Although some of you are going to be a phenom. You're going to get on here and everybody's going to look at you like, "Dude, that is amazing. I've been doing this for 6 months and I can't get that good at it." Some of you are going to be like that. And then other ones will be like 6 months later, you're like, "I'm still working on trying to get it right," because we all develop differently. There's no right or wrong. I got it easy. But I also was, I had a lot of years of experience before I started with it. So just what I'm telling you is, I want you to have the experience. You got to get on here at least 4 times to go through the process of it. And if you really enjoy it, you can spend more time on the wheel. If you're like, "You know what, I did my 4 times, I'm done," I'm okay with that too. Okay? All right. Other questions before I get to cleanup? Okay, so cleanup's really important. I can't stress enough. If we leave a mess, we're not going to work on the wheel. And the wheel is amazing. Now, if you don't want to work on the wheel, don't leave a mess so that everybody gets in trouble. Just tell me, I'm not going to do it. Okay? You can just take whatever grade for that, and then everybody else will be happy still. Okay, so turn your wheel off to start with. Okay, anything that is going to be recycled goes in the recycle thing here. And by the way, you can use like this to scrape your clay off. A lot of times I'll just take my rib, you get the wheel going slow. Of course, I flip it off again. Just scrape it off like that. Okay, and that'll go in the gooey clay bucket. Okay, so everything needs to be washed and cleaned. You want to avoid as much clay in the sink as possible. That's why I have the bucket. So this is gooey clay, this is wheel water, and there's going to be more water in there. So take this, actually, let me put the wheel off again. And I'm just going to do this from a distance, the best that I can. Hopefully you guys will get all of this. So Ashley, would you hit end the stream for me? Just bottom middle right there. They don't need to see all this part. Perfect. One more time. There you go. Perfect. Okay. So, gooey clay.